Well, why don't you look at this? I had to save this post as soon as I came across it because it's a phenomenal representation of how this world is truly ran. Now, we're able to see at the top of the pyramid is Baal, which represents the devil. And the devil itself is not an actual physical thing. It's a spiritual thing. This is why it talks about within the Word of God that our fight is not against flesh and blood, but it's against powers and principalities, talking about the devil. Because the devil is what has the major influences on the royal families, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds. And we're able to see that just through what happened with Prince Andrew, how he got arrested and how he was revealed to be within the Epstein files and all of that. And then it goes down to the Vatican, the Freemasons, the world leaders. All of these people are puppets to the royal family, the Rothschilds. And then from those people, you have the actors, the singers, the sports stars that go through all these rituals and humiliations to just get a little bit of the money that the royal family and the Rothschilds have. And then from under there is the public people. And what they mainly focus on for the public is brainwashing them so they can control us, giving you the ideologies and mindsets that make it easier for them to control you, not allowing you to see the truth and keeping the truth away from you. But the truth is God is real. That's the main truth that they mainly keep everyone away from. Because if we go to the top of the pyramid, that's the one thing that Baal doesn't want us to come to the realization of. And things like this is what I talk about much more on my second channel, Noah's Ark. It's been growing very, very fast because there's great content posted over there. It's just great content. If you want to check it out where I talk about God, first link in the description. So in this video right here, we're going to be getting into the video titled Exposing the Dark Money Controlling Sports. Because we're able to see just that diagram itself that sports and the media is one thing that is being controlled and specifically orchestrated. So let's get straight into this and let's see what's going on.
Money bring these firms into sports. But first, what is private equity? They're investment firms that pool money from wealthy people and institutions and take control of companies. Private equity firms might purchase anything from a basketball team to a restaurant to a newspaper. The goal is to grow these businesses quickly, often by cutting costs and restructuring. Because private equity firms often aren't traded on the stock market, these decisions are made in private. The goal is to make as much money as possible to sell what they bought. Private equity has quietly reshaped huge parts of the American economy. Retail chains like Toys R Us collapsed under massive debt, hospitals and nursing homes have been bought and restructured, and local newspapers have been hollowed out. Even rent has gone up because of private equity. The model isn't always destructive, sometimes it works, but the goal is always the same. Buy something, change it, and eventually sell it for more money. So how are they coming into sports now? In order to understand that, we need to understand how these deals work. And one of the clearest examples of that is the recent sale of the Boston Celtics. Private equity is how Bill Chisholm, the new owner of the Boston Celtics, made all of his money. And in August 2025, he bought his favorite childhood team. That's the fairy tale version of the story. But this is the part that most people missed. Chisholm didn't actually buy the team alone. He couldn't. He didn't have enough money by himself. So to pull it off, he needed over $1 billion in help from one of the most powerful private equity firms in the world, Sixth Street. On paper, Sixth Street only owns part of the team. But according to sources close to the Celtics and with Sixth Street, the private equity firm has a lot more power than they're admitting publicly. Even though Sixth Street isn't listed as the new owner of the team.
Wait, so it cost $6.1 billion to buy a basketball team? How much does it cost to buy the Celtics right now? Let's see. Let's ask ChatGPT real quick. Let's see. What do y'all think? How much do y'all think it costs? But after that, it probably genuinely costs like $7 billion. Yeah, it says right now buying the Boston Celtics would cost $6 to $7 billion. That just shows they're not playing about their money when it comes to buying these teams. They're doing it for a very specific reason.
Team, the influence they have over the team is enormous, but it's quiet. This is how it looks on the surface. Chisholm is the face of the franchise. With Groesbeck, the previous owner stayed on in an advisory role, and Sixth Street was just a financial partner, hands off. But behind the scenes, the power dynamic is different. According to multiple sources close to the Celtics, this was the timeline. Step 1, Chisholm approached Sixth Street to partner on a bid for the Celtics. Step 2, Sixth Street puts in more money than Chisholm, a structure that violated the NBA's rules on how much private equity can own for an NBA team. Step 3. Despite that, the Celtics publicly announced the sale anyway, with Chisholm as the lead buyer, even though he had less money in the sale than Sixth Street. And step 4. That public announcement helped Chisholm raise money from other investors, allowing him to reduce Sixth Street's percentage after the fact and bring the deal into compliance with the NBA's rules on private equity. So while the NBA was eventually able to get Chisholm and the Celtics to comply with their rules around private equity, the power dynamic was already set. Chisholm could not have bought the Celtics without the help of private equity. And both sides know this. I talked to a source close to Sixth Street who said that part of the reason why they went in on this deal with Bill Chisholm is because they'd had a relationship with him outside of sports. They knew him and they trusted him and they wanted him, because he was a Celtics fan, to be the face of the sale and be the face of the ownership group for the new Boston Celtics, owned in part by the private equity firm. That relationship gives Sixth Street a lot of power over Chisholm and the Celtics. And because of that, there's a catch in the ownership structure of how this deal was made. Sixth Street negotiated what's called a preferred share, a special kind of equity within the team that guarantees that the private equity firm gets their money back first if anything goes wrong. If the Celtics lose value, Sixth Street still gets all of their money back. If the other owners lose money on the Celtics, Sixth Street doesn't lose any of it. In a traditional team structure, power equates ownership percentage. If you own 30%, you get 30% of the vote. But preferred shares break that logic. Sixth Street could own 10% or 15%, but they would have way more influence than that percentage indicates. So while the Celtics want you to believe that Bill Chisholm is the most powerful person in the organization, the actual power structure centers around the private equity firm Sixth Street. I reached out to representatives for both the Celtics and Sixth Street, and both did not respond to requests for comment. In the past, private equity firms acted like quiet investors. They just stayed in the corner, they provided some cash, but they didn't have any say in how the team was run on a day-to-day basis. Preferred shares are like a cheat code for Sixth Street. They get all of the potential upside, all of the potential money that the team might make in the future. And when someone controls the only pipeline to more cash, it means they have a pipeline to power. And this power structure quietly shaped one of the most pivotal decisions in recent Celtics history. Holding on to both Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis would have meant paying additional fees for exceeding the luxury tax threshold. Instead, both were traded. It wasn't just about basketball. It was about managing how much money was being spent. And when private equity is involved, how much money is being spent often matters just as much as constructing a winning roster. And this isn't just happening in Boston. In 2021, Sixth Street bought a stake in the San Antonio Spurs. If Sixth Street owns parts of both the Spurs and the Celtics and they meet in the playoff race, who is the private equity firm more incentivized to help? Are they really feeling the need to compete with each other with the same fire, with the same desire to spend money? If a private equity firm owns parts of both teams? Bill Chisholm isn't a villain here. There's no reason to doubt his fandom, and by all accounts, he's a real Celtics fan. He just also happens to be the perfect owner for this new era. He's low profile and has enough money to dream about owning a team, but not enough cash to make it happen, which makes him perfect for private equity. So why are billionaire owners with more wealth than ever selling off parts of their team to private equity firms? Because the Celtics deal isn't unusual. It's part of a much bigger shift happening across sports. To understand why private equity is coming into sports, let's take a look at one group, Arctos, which is the largest private equity firm in sports. Arctos Sports Partners was founded by Ian Charles and David O'Connor in 2019 with the mission of investing in sports teams and ownership groups. Instead of trying to buy teams, they wanted to provide owners with cash so they can continue growing. As of November 2024, Arctos has raised $7.2 billion and committed $4.4 billion across 38 investments. As they launch, Leagues were also loosening rules around allowing private equity ownership in sports. In 2019, MLB became the first to revise their ownership group to allow private equity to hold passive minority percentages of a team. In the following years, the NBA, NFL, and MLS all followed Major League Baseball's lead. And according to people familiar with these conversations, MLB has even discussed letting players invest in the same private equity funds that own pieces of teams. That means the line between players, owners, and investors could start to blur. And while this is...
Bro, that's a lot of Blue Jay hats. That's a lot of Blue Jay hats right there. The Blue Jays making a lot of money just off the hats. Forget the sponsorship, just off the merch.
Under active consideration, according to a leaked source, it does show how much private equity is changing how business people think. Part of what made this such an attractive business to private equity firms is that sports teams in the United States are uniquely stable compared to sports teams in other countries. But most importantly, these teams increase in value a lot. Between 2002 and 2021, NBA team values increased 1,057%, while the S&P 500 increased 458% in the same time. As streaming platforms like Netflix, Amazon, and YouTube grew, the league saw an opportunity to grow their sports in a similar fashion to the Premier League. They wanted global fans. The more fans there are around the world, the more money a team is worth. And because there's only so many sports teams that someone could possibly buy, the scarcity of those teams make the teams even more valuable. Owning a sports team doesn't necessarily mean you have billions of dollars sitting in the bank. It's a little like owning a house in a neighborhood where prices keep going up. On paper, you might be worth millions more than you were a few years ago, but unless you sell the house, you can't actually spend that money. Sports teams work the same way. Their value keeps going up, but that value is mostly locked inside the team itself. And running a winning team actually makes the cash problem worse, because player contracts, luxury taxes, facilities, scouts, analytics departments, that's all real money leaving the building every year. So you can own something worth billions while still needing cash to keep it competitive. And that gap is exactly where private equity firms step in. Arctos has taken advantage of this gold rush. They've become the largest institutional investor.
It's like a game of Monopoly, but just with sports.
In North American sports, with stakes in at least 15 teams in the 4 largest American sports leagues and global investments in PSG, Liverpool, Formula One team Aston Martin, and the Italian league team Atalanta. And because of this,
and like he said, like, it's much more rare. Like, you don't have an infinite amount of sports teams. So it's not like you have an infinite amount of, like, real estate property. And that's what makes the price of it go up, because there's only a finite amount of land. And similarly with this, with the teams, you get what I'm saying? With the teams at NBA, it's not like they have new teams coming in. It's just like the same teams, and that's what keeps the value going up.
The billionaires don't have cash on hand, these private equity firms, which have a lot of cash, have a lot of power over the billionaires. But that's also not how all private equity firms run sports teams. The Los Angeles Dodgers are an example of what happens when deep-pocketed ownership groups with business savvy actually invest in star power. The Dodgers calculated that the way they would make the most money in the long run is investing in the team by signing global stars like Shohei Ohtani and Yoshinobu Yamamoto and trading for guys like Mookie Betts. They bet that having a team with global stars that wins would attract the biggest fan base possible around the world. And it's working. More than 90% of Japanese tourists who visit Los Angeles now visit Dodger Stadium to see Ohtani and the rest of the Japanese stars. The Dodgers model worked because the owners were ambitious. They had bigger visions than just trying to maximize profits on a year-to-year basis. They had a plan for what it would be like to win, to grow prestige for the Dodgers, and eventually how that would not only increase the value of the franchise, but also grow their global fan base and increase the amount of money they made in the long run. Making as much money on a year-to-year basis hasn't been the priority for the Dodgers because they view the actual payoff coming down the road when potentially the team is sold and the valuation of the franchise goes up because they continue to win championships. And because they continue to win championships, they get more fans from around the world. And Walter hopes that this approach can transfer into another sport after the Guggenheim Group bought the Los Angeles Lakers, where he has multiple executives from the Dodgers now consulting on how to better run the Lakers as an efficient organization. But the history of private equity shows, both inside and outside of sports, that most firms aren't patient enough to pull off what the Dodgers are doing. And that's the problem. There's no rule that forces a private equity firm to spend in the way that the Dodgers are, to pursue winning in the way that the Dodgers are. They might tell fans that they're going to spend money, but are they actually doing it? For decades, the contract in sports between fans and owners were that fans cared and owners spent and players played. But private equity is reshaping that contract between fans, owners, and players. The people with the least emotional investment in the results on the field, the private equity firms, are gaining power right now. And while a lot of this might seem doom and gloom, I think fans are also underestimating the amount of power that they have in this situation. While fans don't get a seat at the table, they do decide where their attention and money goes, and that's power.
But that's the thing, the fans have all the power. All of the power. Literally, that's where they're making all of their money from. Similarly, it's the same exact thing with the post I showed you on this Instagram right here. Realistically, the public have the power. It's just that the public is being brainwashed and subconsciously manipulated to not believe so. Same thing goes here with the fans. The fans have the power.
When fans in Europe opposed the creation of the Super League, an opportunity for the biggest teams in global soccer to join together to create a video game style mega league, fans boycotted games and blocked team buses because they believed it went against the spirit of global football culture. Within 48 hours, that project collapsed.
Goes without saying, but should be said, that the project put forward was never going to stand without the support of the fans.
When I was reporting the story, multiple team owners told me that fans underestimate how much power they have, and they pointed to the Super League as an example of fans realizing how much pressure they can put on owners if they stand together and they organize together. And private equity isn't going anywhere, so it's going to be important for sports fans to understand how this is influencing the way that teams are constructed and who ends up on the field wearing your team's uniform. Private equity at its best means that your team could turn into the Los Angeles Dodgers. They're going to spend money. They're going to try to win on a year-to-year basis. At its worst, private equity is going to turn your team into Sears or Toys R Us, a jersey that is stripped for parts. Sports is not as simple as it used to be, and private equity is not going away anytime soon. So if you learned something from the story, make sure to subscribe. We're going to be doing more stories covering the industry of sports like this one. When I take a look at the landscape of sports, owners are...
This just gives me more incentive to think about how there are games and championships that can happen to be rigged, honestly speaking. But comment down below your thoughts when it comes to, championships, playoffs, or games being rigged, in the NFL, NBA, or MLB. Comment your thoughts down below. All right, so smash the like button. Subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on post notifications, because YouTube, I don't know, sometimes it likes to disable the post notifications even if you already turned them on. So just make sure you have them turned on so you know when I post my next videos for y'all. I'm going to catch you on the next one. Peace.